What is up? What is up, YouTube? I'm letting y'all know Uncle Mike is a soldier, y'all. This the last one. I said I was gonna do 5, and this makes number 5 right here. Y'all hit that subscribe button, hit that bell, man. Every celebrity going down with Diddy. There is celebrities going down, man. I'm letting y'all know, man. Real talk, this is not over with. This ain't over with, man. This is only the beginning. It's a chess game. You gotta remember that. It's chess. Checkers is a faster game. Chess is a slower game, and we're playing chess. Y'all hit that subscribe button. Hit that bell. Let's check this bad boy. Yeah.
If you're a celebrity in Hollywood, Doomsday is just 1 month away. And what I mean is that Diddy's trial is scheduled to begin on May 12th, exactly 1 month from now. Dozens of Diddy associates are on the edge of their seats, wondering if they're going to be dragged into the biggest scandal the rap game has ever seen. Each and every day, more names get revealed in lawsuits and news articles, and it's safe to say the trial is going to expose even more celebrity skeletons. That's why we're launching a comprehensive breakdown of all the celebs who are in danger of going down with Diddy. Why?
Wait a minute, y'all. Wait a minute, y'all. Wait a minute. This was 6 months ago, man. Hold up. Pause. All right, y'all. Check this out, man. We're going to go with this one. Diddy life in danger after disturbing prison attack. Cornered and held at knife point. I think it was an imaginary friend that did this, man. Hey, I wore this thing like 2 times, this jacket. And I done ripped it, y'all. I done ripped the daggone thing. Hit that subscribe button, hit that bell. I had to switch up on y'all. It's cold and I ain't thinking. Hit that subscribe button, hit that bell, baby. Uncle Mike out here working hard, trying to stay warm. Let's check it out.
P. Diddy ringing in the new year with a jailhouse meltdown, at least according to some new reports. All this comes as the disgraced singer spends his first holiday season behind bars, and a judge rules one of his accusers can remain anonymous.
The atmosphere inside that prison has turned darker than anyone could have imagined. Diddy's life is reportedly hanging by a thread after a disturbing and violent attack that left even hardened inmates shaken.
Anonymous. By now you're well aware that 55-year-old Sean Combs, also known as P. Diddy, is being held at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn. He's facing federal charges of racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, and transportation to engage in prostitution. The charges came down in September when a grand jury indicted Diddy, half a year after those federal raids were first performed on his homes. Since he was booked, Diddy has made several bids for bail, hoping to get back to one of those homes or an apartment on New York's Upper East Side. Just last month, Diddy's team officially put in its 3rd attempt for his release, asking that he be put on house arrest. The defense originally wanted Diddy to be held on house arrest at his Star Island mansion in Miami, Florida, one of the places that was actually raided way back in March. But Judge Arun Subramanian shot that down pretty quickly, and it was decided if Diddy was granted bail, he'd be staying in New York, specifically on the Upper East Side in a 3-bedroom apartment. That bail would have come with a $50 million price tag and some major restrictions on Diddy's house arrest. Inside the apartment, there would be 2 live-in guards and another guard downstairs. Diddy wouldn't be allowed to access any phones or the internet unless it was used to contact his legal team. And on top of all of that, there would be a vetted list of people approved to visit Diddy, including his legal counsel and of course his family. Diddy's attorney Mark Agnifilo said there was a 0% chance that Diddy would be violent if he was released, and even called the bail package a, quote, very, very rigorous set of conditions. This part is wild. He said it was even more strict than the MDC jail. But Judge Subramanian, he didn't bite on that, and Diddy's bail was denied for the 3rd time. According to a report from the Daily Mail, that's why Diddy had a breakdown. A person close to him apparently said, quote, spending the holidays behind bars was a nightmare for him. If we're to believe all this, Diddy had a meltdown in his cell and begged the guards to take him to the hospital for observation, but they refused. This same friend or person told the Daily Mail, quote, he eventually managed to calm himself down with the meditation technique he's been using while he's been behind bars. It took him a few hours of deep breathing and focusing to get out of the bad space he was in, but he finally managed it. This isn't the first time Diddy's mental health has come into question while he's been at MDC. When he first arrived, he was on suicide watch, which the U.S. Department of Justice National Institute of Corrections describes as supervisory precautions taken for suicidal inmates that require frequent observation. Diddy's suicide watch was only temporary, though. He was housed in a special protective unit of the jail after that for the first few weeks of his stay. But Diddy right now is in Gen Pop, meaning general population, the place where majority of the inmates stay. And that's where he apparently had this meltdown over the holidays, at least according to one source. Another source, though, disagrees with all of this. They say Diddy is staying strong in jail despite missing his family a great deal at Christmas, which is a time he often spends with his children. But however Diddy spent the holidays, there are still a lot of questions in the case of Sean Combs. So we're turning now to former federal prosecutor Nima Rahmani to talk all things Diddy. Nima, thank you so much for coming on with us today.
Of course, Sierra. Thanks for having me, as always.
Now, some of the reports are that P. Diddy had a breakdown or meltdown over the holidays when he is still at MDC behind bars. What do you make of those reports? Could he have had this meltdown?
I believe the reports. And obviously, Diddy is someone who's rich and famous and has lived a life of luxury for many years. And now he's in federal.
According to insiders, the music mogul was cornered and held
That's
at knife
crazy.
point inside his cell in what sources are describing as one of the most terrifying moments of his life. This wasn't some random confrontation or small altercation, this was a full-on targeted threat. Multiple insiders claim that tensions inside the prison have been brewing for weeks, ever since Diddy arrived. The other inmates haven't made things easy. He's a high-profile name, a man used to luxury, and now he's in a world where power isn't measured by fame or money, it's measured by fear. What happened next, though, no one could have predicted. Reports say it all started late at night. Guards were already on edge because of several earlier confrontations in the yard. Diddy had reportedly gotten into an argument earlier that day with another inmate, someone known for being connected, someone people don't mess with. Whatever was said between them must have crossed the line because that night, everything changed. According to those familiar with the incident, Diddy was ambushed. Two inmates reportedly followed him back toward his cell after lights out, where one cornered him while the other blocked the exit. Then came the weapon, a sharpened metal piece.
Prison during the holidays. So this isn't someone who's a hardened criminal who has spent a lot of time in custody. So the fact that he's spending Christmas and New Year's and future holidays in prison is probably finally getting to him. So I'm not surprised that he cracked.
You're right, it's definitely a change of tune from his lavish mansions and the holiday season to what he's experiencing right now. As far as the mental health side of things, I remember when Diddy was first arrested, he was put on suicide watch. So obviously keeping tabs on his mental health. Here in this instance, he apparently was asking for the guards to take him to the hospital so he could be treated there. Is this something that we're going to keep an eye on, Diddy's mental health behind bars?
I think so. And obviously, we haven't seen him, but your colleague Elizabeth has reported that, he looks like he's lost some weight and he has some more gray and white hairs. I think it's taken a toll on him. And I think that he expected, for some reason, that he would be out on bond. And obviously, that hasn't happened. There were 3 different bail applications that were denied by 3 different judges, and ultimately they withdrew their appeal. So now that it's hitting him that Diddy's going to be in custody at least until May 2025, I think he's just having a tough time coming to terms with it. Because like you said, here's someone that had multiple private jets, homes in New York, Miami, Los Angeles, and all of a sudden his only home is his prison cell, and he's not getting the Christmas dinner with his family that he had. And we all saw the video of him having to spend his birthday in prison as well.
You talked about the bail that had been denied 3 separate times, and a lot of people are saying maybe Diddy did have this meltdown because he expected at this point, heading into 2025, he would be back at home, at least on house arrest. You also mentioned how his team has withdrawn their appeal. Why do you think that is? They just kind of accepted that Diddy's going to be in jail until at least the jury trial?
I think they saw the writing on the wall and the fact that, Judge Subramanian would probably be the best judge just because he's a Democratic appointee. He doesn't have a criminal background as a defense attorney or a prosecutor. So here's not someone that has a really pro-prosecution perspective. He considered this bail application for 2 hours and he still denied it. And normally when a district judge or a magistrate judge hears a bail motion, it's a de novo standard, which means for the first time. That means the previous applications, the denials, they don't have any precedential impact. But when you go up on appeal, Sierra, that changes. An appellate court can only reverse a lower court's decision on bail if it's an abuse of discretion. So they really have to defer to that lower court. So the chances of the bail application being granted on appeal were less because of the different standard. And also, we know the application has gotten worse because of Diddy's own conduct while he's in prison. We've talked about how he's used other inmates' pack numbers and he's made these three-way calls allegedly, trying to intimidate witnesses. So not only do you have the bail denied because he's a risk of flight or danger to the community, but also because he's trying to obstruct justice and affect the integrity of the proceedings.
A lot going on even behind bars for Diddy. I know we talked, you and I believe, about those allegations that he was using other inmates' phone calls or their lines, you just mentioned it, to talk about things so that prosecutors couldn't listen in. I'm sure that federal prosecutors are still keeping a very close eye on P. Diddy, his communication with the outside.
Smuggled and hidden for weeks, now pressed right up against Diddy's throat. Witnesses say he froze. That moment. Everything that had built his life, the fame, the parties, the wealth, the reputation, vanished. All that was left was fear. The motive? That's still unclear. Some say it was personal, an inmate trying to send a message. Others say it was orchestrated, that someone outside or higher up wanted to make sure Diddy understood his place. But one thing's certain, this wasn't just a random act of violence. It was planned, deliberate, and meant to scare him to the edge of his sanity. Prison guards eventually intervened after hearing shouting. By the time they reached his cell, the confrontation had already spiraled out of control. Diddy was reportedly on the ground, shaking, while the attacker was dragged away screaming. But the real damage wasn't physical, it was psychological. Sources close to his legal team say he hasn't been the same since. He barely eats, barely talks, he's lost weight, and he's constantly asking to be moved to solitary
world, as it were. Do you think they're going to use any of this information at the coming trial?
I do, because if you're a prosecutor, you have to anticipate the defense in the case. And the defense in this case is clear that the sexual contact happened, but it was consensual. So Diddy's defense team is going to do everything they can to convince the jury that even though the freak-offs happened, these were consensual sexual acts by adults. So how can they do this? They can do it through cross-examination to try to show that the victims who are testifying, they're lying. They can try to pay off the victims, either through an outright bribe or a civil settlement. I'm not accusing anyone of doing anything, but these are all possibilities. The government has raised the possibility that Diddy's trying to intimidate the witnesses so they change their testimony. Because obviously, we know it doesn't matter what the victims say in their civil complaints or what they told the FBI or prosecutors. They have to take the stand, testify, and tell the jurors the exact same thing. So if these victims go sideways, either before or during trial, that really helps Diddy in the defense.
Hey, all you business owners or anyone thinking of a side hustle. You know how keep financial huge, something we've talked about, and it's really high. Odoo.com/LCnews29 and try Odoo for free today. So the testimony, I think this is going to be huge, something we've talked about, and it's really highly anticipated because they're the ones who were victims in this situation. Is the defense really going to attack that? The fact that these people are bearing all, it's probably going to be very emotional for them or very difficult to talk about on a public stage. Do you think that's something that the defense is really going to focus on?
I think so. We know, at least in the civil complaints, one of the defense strategies has been to out the victims. Some of them want to remain anonymous, right? And the defense in almost every case has filed a motion to unmask the identity of the accusers because they think on the defense side that maybe people will be more hesitant to come and talk about their sexual assault or sexual abuse at a very public trial. And it's hard for victims of abuse. So I do think the defense is banking on that. And we know that some of these acts happened years, sometimes even decades ago. So they're going to point out inconsistencies in any statements that they're making and argue that this shows that they're lying. And we've already seen it with a couple of the victims who have given statements already to the media. One was an interview with CNN. Another victim gave an interview with NBC. That victim, of course, being the Alabama woman who accused both Diddy and Jay-Z. And after those interviews, the reporters and the media outlets saw some inconsistencies, things that were incorrect in terms of maybe the dates or the locations of where things happened. And I think
confinement just to feel safe. One insider described it bluntly: Diddy's broken. He's not built for this life. He's terrified. And it's not just fear, it's humiliation. For a man who's built his entire identity around power and control, being reduced to begging guards for protection is devastating. Prison insiders say he spends most of his time alone, pacing, replaying the attack in his head. He's told those close to him that he doesn't think he'll survive much longer if something doesn't change. His lawyers have already filed an emergency request for transfer to a safer facility. They're claiming that his life is in imminent danger and that the prison has failed to provide adequate protection. According to them, the attack proves that Diddy can't stay where he is, not another day, not another week. They've reportedly submitted new paperwork demanding federal review, arguing that keeping him there is a violation of his basic human rights. But behind all the legal jargon, the truth is darker. Word inside the facility is that this attack was a message, and the message was...
The defense is going to use that to say, well, these people aren't mistaken. They're outright lying, and the reason they're lying is they want fame, they want money. So we're going to see a very aggressive cross-examination in this case, Sierra.
The story that you brought up about Jane Doe, the woman who's accusing Diddy and Jay-Z from back in the year 2000 when she was 13 years old, that one's huge because a judge in that case just ruled she could remain Jane Doe. So for now, at least, we don't know her name. If that's the case for some of these people that the government is going to call, how will Diddy's team prepare for cross-examination if they're not sure exactly who they are or what the experience was?
So it's a little bit different in remaining anonymous in a civil case. Ultimately, if a case does go to trial, that victim will have to take the stand and testify in a public courtroom. Now, with respect to what the government is going to do in the criminal case, right? The government is not going to call more than 100 victims. That just doesn't make sense, right? The government is going to pick maybe their 5 to 10 best victims. Obviously, we know the best of all is going to be Cassie Ventura, just because there's a video and she was with Diddy for more than a decade. So she's their star witness. But after that, you want some other victims who are telling the same story of physical and sexual violence. So they're going to want victims that they think are telling consistent cases, victims that won't be beat up too much on cross-examination. Maybe that's a bad pun to use, but someone that can withhold the very aggressive attacks. I mean, we've seen just the filings in these cases, how aggressive both Combs and Jay-Z's lawyers have been when it comes to going after these victims. So you want to make sure that if you're a prosecutor, hey, this is someone that's going to hold up, because the entire case really comes down to this victim testimony. I mean, obviously, to the extent that there's video evidence, that's great. That's the best of all, because video doesn't lie. But we're talking about sex acts that happen behind closed doors. So we really need the individuals who participated in them to come and tell their story to the jury. So I think the prosecution, like I said, is going to have maybe 5 to 10 of their best witnesses. So they're going to have to disclose those witnesses to the defense and any prior statements that they've made. Obviously, there's one-way disclosure in criminal procedure. The defense doesn't have to do anything. Prosecution has to give over those names, give over those statements, so the defense will absolutely have the opportunity to prepare for the cross-examination.
We've talked about what we expect from both sides. The fact that Diddy's team is going to say, yeah, we had these freak-offs, but they were consensual. And then, as you just mentioned, the incredible testimony we can expect from the prosecution, these witnesses that were involved. So that's kind of what we can expect in May when it comes time for trial. But as of now, what are these federal prosecutors doing to prepare and make sure they have an airtight case?
They're really preparing those witnesses, and they're trying to establish one of three things. The difference between sex trafficking and consensual sex is force, fraud, or coercion. They are going through their victims and they're saying, how can I establish force? How can I establish coercion? Probably not so much fraud, right? Because ultimately, this case is about sex trafficking. There's prostitution counts, and prostitution is different. Prostitution just means that the sex happened, but there was an exchange of something of value. But the feds aren't trying this case to convict Diddy of prostitution. They want to get to sex trafficking. So their entire focus right now is...
Now that this attack has gone public, things are only getting worse for Diddy. Every move he makes is being watched, by guards, by other inmates, by the world. His lawyers, meanwhile, are pushing harder than ever. They're trying to spin this attack into a reason for early release, saying his safety can't be guaranteed. Some insiders claim they're even preparing to reach out to political allies, trying to get the case elevated to federal attention. But after everything that's come out about him, it's unclear if anyone's willing to take that risk. Inside those concrete walls, Diddy's reality has completely collapsed. The empire he built means nothing here. The power he once commanded doesn't exist. The only thing that matters now is survival, and after being cornered and held at knife point, he knows exactly how fragile that survival really is. And the public will keep watching, as we always do. We watch violence because it gratifies a primitive curiosity. We watch celebrities fall because it makes larger systems feel just a little more human. We consume these stories in bites and hot takes, often oblivious to the real people behind the headlines.
He accused Combs of trying to arrange three-way phone calls and buying the use of other inmates' phone privileges to try to make sure the government wasn't listening in, that he was having these private conversations, that he was allegedly trying to contact witnesses in the case, that he allegedly orchestrated a birthday campaign to help his public image while he was locked up. So if we hear a government response, I'm sure they're going to say something about that. Then the defense highlights he's not a risk of flight, he's not a danger to the community, which, by the way, I think are real key points here. But they seem to echo a lot of the same arguments that they have already stated to the court. And remember, they haven't been successful in the past. That he voluntarily came to New York last year to surrender himself to authorities, that he gave up his passport to his attorneys 6 months before his arrest, paid off his mortgage on his Miami home so it was free and clear for him to stay at while out on bond. He was just acquitted of the most serious charges that he was facing, which, by the way, carried decades, if not life in prison. That he's not a risk of flight. That's the basic argument. Now, when it comes to the danger argument, that is key. Why? Judge Subramanian had said after the verdict that the reason he was denying bail was because of Combs' violence, that his own attorneys admitted he was violent during the course of the trial. Well, here is what Combs' defense attorneys argue about that. Quote, the court noted that the defense admitted a history of domestic violence as to Miss Ventura and that he struck Jane twice in June 2024. However, we strenuously object that Mr. Combs poses a danger to the community, aside from a single instance on June 18, 2024, where Mr. Combs was provoked by Jane through her own acts of violence. There was no evidence of any acts of violence in the last 7 years. Indeed, the jury notably rejected the government's argument that the June 2024 incident constituted coercion when it acquitted Mr. Combs of the sex trafficking charge. Also, prior to his arrest in this case, Mr. Combs enrolled in a domestic violence program in which he participated until he was arrested and incarcerated in connection with this case. If released on conditions, Sean Combs will not be violent to anyone. As we said in court, this jury gave him his life back, and he will not squander his second chance at life, nor would he do anything to further jeopardize his 7 children not having a father and 4 of his children not having a parent at all. The court can fashion any set of conditions, and Mr. Combs will abide by any condition to make the court comfortable that Mr. Combs will not be violent toward any person. And that is when they propose the following bail package. That Combs will sign a $50 million bond secured by his home in Miami, that the bond will be co-signed by 3 financially responsible people, that Combs will reside in his home in Miami, that his travel will be limited to the Southern District of Florida, the Southern District of New York for attorney meetings, as well as airports that are necessary to travel between the two, that he will be placed under the express supervision of the U.S. Pretrial Services Agency, that he will report to that agency as directed, that his passport will be surrendered to pretrial services, that he shall not apply for any other passport, and they even highlight that the court can add other conditions too. Home detention, private security approved by the court, mental health treatment. He'll agree to it all. Now, let me tell you, we kind of previewed that this all would happen, this argument would happen, this new bail package would be presented when we spoke a few weeks ago to renowned bail bondsman, to the celebrities, by the way, to the stars, Ira Judelson, who apparently had been working with Combs' team behind the scenes on working to secure his release. Here's what he said about a new package after the verdict.
When Mark reached out to me afterwards, we started thinking about putting another bail package together.
And what is that bail package and by the way, is this a bail package that you think could be submitted again even after the judge just denied bail?
Well, the judge denied bail based on the statute, and the statute stated a certain amount of information.
It was clear Diddy isn't untouchable anymore. Some guards, speaking anonymously, have said they've seen the tension rising for days. They say inmates resent him. They see his case, his fame, his rumored wealth, and they see someone who represents everything they hate about the outside world. Some see him as a symbol of greed and privilege, and that makes him a target. Others whisper that this wasn't even about Diddy personally, that he's caught up in something bigger: prison politics, debts, rivalries, and favors that run deeper than anyone knows. Either way, he's now living in a nightmare where every step could be his last. And yet, there's still the public reaction, and it's explosive. Online, fans are torn between shock and disbelief. Some are horrified by what's happening, demanding justice and protection for him. Others aren't sympathetic at all, calling it karma, saying he's finally facing consequences for years of alleged corruption and abuse. The internet is split, but one thing unites everyone: nobody expected it to get this dark, this fast. The media's been circling like vultures. Every leak, every whisper from inside that facility turns into a headline. And
Combs and two of his longtime girlfriends had a private, intimate life that is not uncommon today. They're talking about Jane and Cassie Ventura. Quote, "It may not have been common on June 25th, 1910, when the Mann Act, or as it was originally called, the White Slave Traffic Act, was passed, but attitudes about sex and morality have come a long way in the last 115 years. It is worth noting that when the Mann Act was passed to protect the morals and decency of America's women were not allowed to vote. As noted below, perhaps due to the troubling background of this statute, whose history is rich with both racism and misogyny, the Department of Justice has limited its application to those people profiting financially from the business of prostitution and not using it to prosecute consensual adults for their own lifestyles." By the way, we covered this on a previous sidebar. The defense made an argument months ago to have these charges thrown out, called it basically racially motivated, that it was strange that it was being used against a successful black man. That argument didn't work. He was ultimately prosecuted and he was convicted on those charges. Hey everybody, real quick, this is another law and crime legal alert. It includes to all this. Learn more and enthusiasm in her intimate life with Combs. They continue. Cassie Ventura and Sean Combs went to swingers clubs and they had threesomes. Miss Ventura consistently expressed interest and enthusiasm in her intimate life with Combs, including what they called freak-offs. Jane and Sean Combs had threesomes too. When Jane and Combs watched pornography together, Jane testified that she contacted two different porn stars and invited them to join her and Mr. Combs. Both Miss Ventura and Jane testified that very often they would see the same men over and over again for years. In July of 2024, Jane testified, for instance, that she suggested to Mr. Combs that they call Paul. Jane explained that she told Combs she, quote, missed Paul. When asked why she said that, she responded, "Because I did." This was a lifestyle, one that both Miss Ventura and Jane chose, one they all, as grown adults, had a right to choose. Like many aspects of sex and intimacy, it was not without its complications, its bouts of jealousy, and at times, its frustrations. But that is a hallmark of any serious romantic relationship, and that is what these were: serious, long-term romantic relationships. By the way, not surprising they're really focusing on this because, again, he was acquitted of sex trafficking. They highlight how the jury didn't find sex trafficking of Jane or Cassie, that it didn't occur. There was no force, fraud, or coercion that was used to induce these women to engage in commercial sex acts. For transportation to engage in prostitution, what he was convicted of, the prosecution didn't have to prove that violence was used or that fraud was used or threats were used. It was just, did you transport these women and men for the purposes of sex work, commercial sex acts? And obviously the jury convicted him of that. And they highlight all the jury found was that there was prostitution, payment of porn stars and escorts. And they highlight that he is a swinger or under the Mann Act, a John. And they argue he doesn't deserve to be locked up for this. Quote, Sean Combs should not be in jail for this conduct. In fact, he may be the only person currently in a United States jail for being any sort of John, and certainly the only person in jail for hiring adult male escorts.
But consumption is not empathy, and it is certainly not intervention. There is also the legal calculus, charges, evidence, plea dynamics. If the attack is confirmed, there may be additional charges for the assailant. If it is not confirmed, the story will live in an ambiguous space, a rumor that cannot be fully erased. Either way, the court of public opinion will render swift judgments that the legal system will never match in speed or ritual. In the quiet hours, when the noise from the TV and the phone dies, the person who felt the blade will be left with compounding thoughts, regret over choices that led to incarceration, anger at the immediate perpetrators, disappointment at systems that didn't prevent it. Celebrity can't buy back those minutes. It can't unmake the terror. It can, at best, buy better legal representation and more aggressive procedural responses. And there's a lesson in all of this for the rest of us. Vulnerability is universal. No matter how high you climb, there are places where your status buys you nothing. There are realities that reduce us all to a shared humanness. For some it is sacred. For others it is terrifying. For Diddy, for the moment that he faced a blade, the lesson will be indelible. Even those closest to him, the people who once depended on his name, his money, his influence, are starting to distance themselves. The calls are fewer, the messages have slowed. And as Diddy's world shrinks down to a 6 by 8 foot cell, he's realizing that fame doesn't buy protection in a place like this. This attack wasn't just a warning, it was a shift. It marked the moment Diddy went from a fallen star to a hunted man. And while his team scrambles for answers, one truth is becoming impossible to ignore. If he stays where he is, if nothing changes soon, there may not be much left of him to save. Because once a target is marked inside prison walls, it doesn't matter who you were on the outside. It doesn't matter how much money you had or how many awards sat on your shelf. Inside, you're just another inmate, and once the sharks smell blood, they don't stop. For Diddy, this isn't just a fight for freedom anymore, it's a fight to stay alive. And as every day passes, it's looking more and more like time is running out.
Oh my God. Yeah, I forgot all about this new software. It's not working like it's supposed to. I wanted to say in the closing, man, that Diddy gave these girls drugs, man. These girls was hooked on drugs, so they wanted to get these drugs. I want to see. It is so dark, I can't even see nothing. So I'm going to take the lens off to see if that's better. Oh, man. This ain't working out for me, y'all. But long story short, yeah, Diddy, you can't say that the girls wanted to freak off. They wanted the drug craving to go away. That's what, in order to get the drug craving to go away, you feel, I guess, normal, because you high again. And normal came with the S, you know. So this right here, this is crazy, man, how y'all can say that these people wanted it. Don't nobody want that type of life, man. Don't nobody want that. Anyway, y'all hit that subscribe button, hit that bell. Y'all take it light, take it slow. Tell them Uncle Mike told you so. Let me get out this cold, baby. Peace out.